When you think about the businesses that truly define the Conejo Valley, which ones come to mind? For me, Tarantula Hill Brewing Company is right at the top of that list. Today on Canago Valley Visionaries, I'm joined by CEO John Edney. John is one of the visionaries behind Tarantula Hill, the first brewery to open in Thousand Oaks, and now a name that's become synonymous with community, creativity, and of course, phenomenal beer. What began as a bold idea to convert a 22,000 square foot furniture store into a craft brewery and tap room has grown into so much more. Tarantula Hill is now a family-friendly destination, a cornerstone of local culture, and the heart of a growing retail distribution that's gaining momentum far beyond Ventura County. In this episode, John shares the story behind it all, from the early vision to the challenges of building something entirely new to what's next, including the backyard, a destination for live music, and a look at their dream location for a second tap room. Let's get into it. If you enjoy this episode and find value in the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and rating. This helps more people find the podcast, and therefore each story can reach more folks in the Conejo Valley. Hey, John. Welcome to Conejo Valley Visionaries. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I am so thrilled to have you. I started the podcast about a year ago, and you have been at the top of my list ever since starting it. Obviously, such an anchor to the Conejo Valley Tarantula Hill Brewing Co. And I'm so thrilled to just be able to learn a little bit more about your journey to opening and what you guys have in store. So thank you for being here and sharing some of your time.
Absolutely.
So what we like to do here is always kind of go back to the beginning. And I'm curious, as a, roaming the halls of Thousand Oaks High School, could you have ever imagined that you and your buddies would have opened the first ever brewery in Thousand Oaks?
Not even close. We definitely drank a lot of beer, so it was always on the radar, I guess, but nothing like this, no.
Okay. And what did you want to be when you were in high school?
I think probably in high school I probably wanted to be a professional surfer and artist. I've always been an artist, so something in that field, I guess.
Okay. And did you end up going and pursuing either of those?
I clearly was not good enough of a surfer to go that route. But but always, always it's definitely still a passion.
Yeah.
But yes, I did. I went to design school and got into that right out of high school. Yeah, I did. It's always sort of always been a good tool to have. I've used it my whole life. Be able to create my own content and design and
Okay.
logos and all that stuff.
And I noticed, I mean, this is jumping ahead, but a big part of Tarantula Hill Brewing Co. is sort of like the supporting of the arts with your events and different arts fairs and things. Is that something that you just continue to, is that you're doing, like bringing that to the forefront and making sure that your passion is represented there as well?
Yeah, 100%. I definitely felt supported, by the community, growing up here as far as being an artist. And that's kind of a way of giving that back. And yeah, and also sort of, big picture too for the thing, like, the business is sort of run as like I'm one of my roles is this as the CMO. I'm the marketing officer here as well. And in a lot of ways, that role that I have is like the boss of the whole thing. Like everything is about how we market and how the product that we're selling and branding and all of that and so having being in touch with the arts is also kind of feeding that fire. So it's there's always contributors from the community in that respect. So
Yeah. Well, it's interesting from a marketing perspective that, and I am no craft beer aficionado, that's for sure. However, it does feel like with the advent of craft beer, like which came first, craft beer or like beautifully designed graphic labels for beers? Because I feel like those two things, like that was something that like from a marketing perspective and with your like creative eye, I mean, how is that an important part of marketing beer now is to have, these like really interesting artistic labels?
Yeah, I think anytime you have a canvas, you should max it out, you know?
Mhm.
You should take advantage of, um, of that, of having any type of canvas like that to expose people to something beautiful, you know? And I think, when we opened in 2019, we weren't the only people around trying to open craft breweries in the state. Like there was a flurry. So and initially our model, because of how much competition there was craft brewery wise, we initially didn't open thinking that we were going to be in distribution. We did Canning wasn't really in the cards. We thought we were going to open this space and then potentially open more tap rooms. But when COVID hit, we faced the challenge. We had to pivot.
Yeah.
And people weren't coming here, so we had to get the beer out there. So we hired a local company, Boom Hut, and they came in and they did their mobile canning, and they came in and helped us can the beer, and we started distribution. And then that's when kind of it was, like I said, that looked at the cans as a canvas for something, and then it was like, how do we, it was right away. We need to stick out amongst, um, you could have the best tasting beer in the world, but if they don't feel inclined to pull it off the shelf, they're never going to know. So it's definitely, was part of the strategy to get people to get into our beers.
So the space before was a empty furniture store. And then there was this opportunity, which is incredible, that Thousand Oaks was like allowing finally a brewery licenses, right? So you were able to like jump on that. But how do you take the space? Had you opened a retail space before? Did you guys know how to convert it into like a well branded place?
I was fortunate enough to be at that point where I got to be a part of designing, the building and the way it was going to look, and I got to design the kitchen um, and I kind of to answer one of the questions. No, no, I had never done this before. None of us involved had done any of that before. In this regard, I guess. But in my past career, I was in the music industry, and I was in a band and toured for about 15 years. Got to tour the country a lot, and also got to tour in Europe quite a bit. Probably mostly Europe, more than anywhere. Was We had more success there than in the States. We typically would tour Europe in the summer because we had the luxury of doing that, but had been there enough in the winter to know like why the summer is such a thing there. And a lot of places, especially the UK and Germany and all that stuff, the winters are pretty tough. And so when summertime comes, they want to be outside drinking beer, listening to live music, and having fun. And so amazing experience for us to get to go over there and be a part of that and play shows. But it really made me think about in California how lucky we are that we have the reverse. We pretty much have summer all year long and then a couple months of winter. And even for the winter for us, like, is still some most of the days in winter are like a nice summer day in north, like in Scotland or something. So we're so spoiled here, but then we go and we eat in restaurants, and most restaurants are indoors.
Yes.
So it became really important, that when I was given this opportunity to say, like, we have to have this, we have all this space. Let's find a way to maximize the outdoors. And I think that the front deck here, it's so big and expansive that it definitely makes us unique. Even we get crowded a lot, but there's usually space out front if you wanted to sit outside. So that was a big part of it. And then another very conscious decision on my part was on the design was that men. I don't want to sound sexist or anything like that, but typically men will drink in a garage. Drink beers, and they don't really care about the environment. Drink in a field or whatever.
A
But
driveway.
a driveway, yeah, these are common places for guys to hang out and drink beer. But women, their expectation is something much nicer. So, we wanted to make it someplace that was very inviting and comfortable. And so then there was the challenge of like, but we're a brewery, so it needs to be masculine. So those are kind of some of the things that we kind of built into the design, having a masculine, but, sleek and pretty, so all that kind of stuff went into the concept of the design of this place. And, that fed onto the design of the logo and all the branding. It's all trying to be cohesive. And then, like you said, having, again, like a guy may typically just pull a beer off the shelf that just is a white can that says blue letters beer, right? Like that's a thing. But maybe that same guy's wife goes to buy him beer and she's going to pick something that's pretty. So yeah, so all that's part of the branding. And we did the core line initially in that regard. Um and then when we started to get distribution for the core line, we went to a friend of mine, Risk. He's a local artist. Are you familiar with Risk?
I'm not, no.
He's a world famous artist, and we're lucky enough that he resides here in Thousand Oaks. He's been here for a long time. He's originally from New Orleans, but came here, I think, during his like college years. Lived in LA and went to USC, and has been in the area since. He's a graffiti artist. He's one of the most famous graffiti artists in the world. And I think he's the first graffiti artist who ever sold pieces in an art gallery.
Interesting. Okay.
And now he's, pretty much, his art is in galleries all over the world. He owns a gallery here in town. It's called the Compound. It's right on Teal Boulevard.
I've noticed it, but I've never happened to go in, and I have to go check that out because I always miss that kind of energy here. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's a very cool gallery. To me, it's a gem in Thousand Oaks. If you went to that gallery in LA, it would be one of the coolest galleries in LA, and that it's here in town is very exciting. So yeah, so we were, fortunately, we had a relationship and we were friends, and he came on board and helped us with our core line, the cans. All that art is his art. His color palette is pretty much every color in the rainbow, and it's all, sort of very vibrant and just great art. Just lended itself very well to the cans, and it's been a big part of it. And then also to have, you know, he has a huge following, huge fan base. So for those people to see that he does these beers helps too. His fans are into our beer too. So
Yeah, no, that's amazing because I know it seems like a big part of what you guys do is collaboration. And that's really incredible that the first one of the early collaborations was with a local artist and in terms of like creating the brand. I love that. So, when those early days, I know, so opening in 2019, COVID hits, distribution was a big part of how you pivoted. Like, can you describe what those days felt like back then? I mean, or did you black them out?
definitely parts of it are blacked out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was all very surreal. It didn't seem like it was possible that this could happen. Initially, I very vividly remember, which most people I think remember, kind of the word was that this will be over in 2 to 3 weeks. So just weather the storm, and so that seemed very doable, although very scary. Like we can't afford to just close for a week.
Yeah. And
And
and the space is 22,000 square feet, right? That's like a huge
yeah,
investment right there.
yeah, it's a lot. Like and the payroll, and we have well over 100 employees, and what are these people going to do? It was quite overwhelming, and then very quickly it turned into, this is going to be more than 2 to 3 weeks, and what are we going to do to survive? And one of the things with craft beer is that it has to be, you have to consume it fresh. So right away the thought came, to us, like, what are we going to do with all this beer that we've brewed? And like currently we were at the, we were still, probably just open about 6 months when that happened, maybe 9 months. So we were kind of on a mission to brew as much beer as possible so that we had as many taps as possible. So we were going for it, and everything was full. And so, what are we going to do with all this beer? So, like I said earlier, we right away we just say, hey, well, let's get Boom Hut in here and can the beer up, and we'll just start. We took um, five people from that worked here and made them salespeople, and and had them just go out and just start, hitting all the local liquor stores um, where anywhere that was selling beer at the time. Lots of people were drinking beer at home at that
Right.
time,
Right.
so there was a demand for it. And Yeah, so it ended up turning out to be a great move for us. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And with the space, I mean, have you seen like where Tarantula Hill Brewing Co. is now versus when you first opened in 2019? Is it essentially kind of in the same, is it what you imagined it would be? Or outside of given, the distribution part was a big part that changed, but like as the space itself, is it sort of where you thought you would want it?
No, it's definitely another sort of beautiful mistake that came about from the COVID thing. Was they, I guess mistake isn't the right word, but every we were fortunate when they did start letting people come back out. They want everybody sitting outdoors. So we were fortunate that we had a lot of outdoor space, but people were using their parking lots as well. So we started using our parking lot in the back. People were very happy that they came. We could still accommodate, even with all the distancing, the tables spread out and all that stuff, we could still accommodate a ton of people. And already at that point, this is a couple months in, at that point, people were very much missing being out amongst people and being around people. I think it really made people appreciate more, how much we all need that in our lives. Um, and it made us, feel good about, that we have this space, and we had all that space in the back. And then so as time went by, the distancing shrunk, and now, we're still using the space. And so it turned out to be kind of the beautiful whatever that happened that I was talking about, was that we started utilizing that space in the back for live music. And so now it's called the backyard, is what we call it.
Okay.
And we want it to feel like, kind of like, I grew up in Thousand Oaks going to, backyard parties. That's what we did, back in the day. And there would be a keg in the backyard and red Solo cups, and, you know, you know, live bands and whatever. So that's kind of the vibe back there. Yeah, so we've been working with the city on the, currently there's not a way, you're not like in our, the permits or whatever, you're not allowed to have amplified live music outside.
Oh, interesting.
You
Okay.
can pull a a use by use permit to have an event where you can play music outside. So we're working with this. We've been doing it for, it's been a couple years now, um, and the community really seems to enjoy it. The city's aware of that, and they're working with us on trying to get us, lock down that permit so that we can basically have what will be, the first outdoor live music venue in Thousand Oaks.
Wow,
So yeah,
that's
so that
incredible.
yeah, and we never dreamed that would be a part of this space.
And I imagine as a uh, musician, as a performer, and having that come full circle for you must feel pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Now, do I understand correctly that you also have a recording studio?
Yes, yeah,
So you're busy.
yeah.
Is that still part of your day-to-day life?
No, it's not at the
Okay.
moment. It's currently on hiatus. Yeah, I definitely, I think now that we're turning the live music more into a full time thing or whatever, that there may become useful. If I was able to get it going, it would just be for my own personal use, and both of my kids are young, but they're both musically inclined as well. So it would be, more sort of for that kind of stuff, not as like a commercial studio by any means.
Speaking of kids, one of the things that I had read when one of your early kind of aspirations with the space was to make it family friendly. I think you guys have done a really good job at that, and it's pretty incredible, though, that now maybe with the backyard and the live music, that you're really touching the full spectrum of age groups of people that live out here, and I do think it's one of those spaces that I feel good about bringing my kids to, where as a parent, you can enjoy a drink and food, but also let your kids run around, which thank you for doing that because we need more spaces like that in an area like the Conejo Valley where there are so many families, just to be able to like enjoy yourself, be outdoors, but also like have your kids meeting other kids and enjoying themselves as well.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Yeah, we like to say like our people ask our age demographic, we say, 0 to 100. Um, yeah, and I think having the ice cream is a big part of that because the kids enjoy obviously hanging out with other kids, but they love coming for the ice cream,
Yes.
and then also, so obviously the adults can have adult beverages and have a good time. Yeah, it's definitely a part of it. And then we, because we have so much space, we can, we could be having one area, family friendly, another area, something more, we could have comedy somewhere else that's, not as kid friendly, whatever. And, still it's, and then, late nights on the weekends, it, definitely is you know, a younger adult demographic, and the families kind of filter out. So it's been great for that, for sure.
Tell me about the ice cream. I know that was like an early part of the business plan. It sounds like I understand it. It's a you have a relationship. Your dad is the force behind it. Why was ice cream so important to bring that into play so early on? And I think food. I know you've talked about like quality of food versus quality of beer. Can we talk a little bit about the like food options?
Yeah. My dad started driving school buses when he was 16 and was in the school bus business, had a full career there. And then about 25 years ago, about 20 years prior to us opening, the company he worked for sold and he wasn't quite ready to retire yet. So he bought a house in Hawaii, and then he was looking for something to do, and he ended up buying an ice cream factory that was for sale. And so I went over and helped him kind of get it going, and learned about how to make the ice cream and the whole process, and was involved in that business with him for 20 years. And I was doing sales on the mainland, and we got a place down in San Diego called Hammond's, which is, I believe, has 3 locations now. It's one of the bigger. It's very popular, and the ice cream was is made in Hawaii
Mhm.
and shipped over. So yeah, so we were working on some stuff. I was working on at the time that this opportunity came up. I was working on trying to figure out how to manufacture ice cream here in California. It wasn't a popular idea in the beginning amongst investors and the team, because it kind of didn't make sense to have beer and ice cream.
Sure, right.
But the kind of the easy way I explained it was like, imagine, if I wanted to come and have a beer, my kids aren't going to want to come here. But if I can convince them that there's ice cream, then I get to hang out and have 2 beers, and they get to have ice creams. I get to stay a little bit longer, and everybody's happy. And it worked out. I think it again, like I said, it just plays into it makes it adds sort of an unseen element or whatever, but it's a huge part of why it's a family vibe here. And then the second part, you were saying about the food. Initially, we thought on paper, when we were doing the plans and pro formas and all that stuff, we thought that we thought it was important to keep the food element simple so that we could keep it. We wanted to have the highest level, like the quality, everything should be at the tier that, like, we pride ourselves on making some very high level beer, a super premium gourmet ice cream, and we wanted the food to, all of that to be at that same level. So we felt like if the simpler we could keep it, the better our chances would be of that happening. We wanted to have pizza be the main thing and just make a really really good pizza. And then when we were opening, we had a soft opening, but word got out around town, and 1,000 people showed up, and we learned really fast that with the one pizza oven that we have, it was taking over an hour to get a pizza. People were excited to be here, so they were patient, I think, with us in the beginning. Some people were upset about it, but for the most part, people were like, hey, it's, you got to wait an hour for a pizza. And it was, operationally, this is a large spot. It's very complicated. Um, but obviously we knew that that wasn't sustainable. So we started adding, wings um, and then, burgers and whatever. So it's just kind of evolved. It was just basically adding stuff to take some load off of the pizza oven. And yeah, so then and we were very fortunate that like a couple months into this, Chef Ivan, he's our executive chef. He kind of found us. He was he was working in LA, but he lived here in town, and he heard about us and just kind of came in and checked it out. And we got very lucky to get him, and he's been with us ever since. And he does a fantastic job uh, creating great food in a very very small space for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's no small feat. And also, yeah, kid friendly, but like delicious, all the thing, like has a lot of marks to probably hit.
Yeah.
And it is interesting that out of all the breweries, I mean, I feel like traditionally, at least the ones that I've seen locally, they don't have the restaurant food option. So it's to be able to have both of those things feels pretty unique.
Yeah, a lot of places, a lot of breweries, because of the space that you need, they end up be going into like commercial areas, which more so these days is common for people to eat in industrial areas. And but often people build a brewery, but then not necessarily aren't building a kitchen there, so you kind of get used to the food truck concept
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But and in the beginning, I think in the beginning of the craft beer craze, it was pretty common to go to a brewery and try their beers and not have any food options. But it's become more and more the expectation from people who want to go and do that there is some sort of a food offering there. It's and if you want, if you're eating and drinking, then you get to sample more beers. If you're just drinking, there's a limit, before yeah. So it makes sense, and that's the whole thing about craft anything, right? Is that you want to try all of it, as many as you can, and variety, and it's fun. It's part of it's just part of the experience. So
I feel like you guys have cracked the code on like the algorithm of how to keep people in Tarantula Hill Brewing Co. It's satisfy the kids, the women, the overall food consumption. It's very smart. What has surprised you most about running Tarantula Hill?
people, managing people, I guess. It's never like going back to, like I said, me being a little surfer kid at Thousand Oaks High School. If you would have asked me then, would you want the here, if you showed me a picture of what this looks like, said, would you want to do this later in life? I would say absolutely. But the thing that you don't think about is, uh, basically, it takes 130 personalities to make all this happen, and they're all, in my eyes, equally as important. Every person, every job has a purpose to make it all click. I think operationally, I think I was game for the task of like figuring out how to create the roles. And we do some pretty creative stuff. So there wasn't a template for us by any means. Couldn't kind of look at, you know, we couldn't go to the Cheesecake Factory and sort of cut and paste
Mhm.
that model here. So all of those operations had to be created, and they're all very different. So you need certain type personality types for each one, and it's often people who are at a certain place in their life that will take this job or this job or this job. Yeah. So I was completely unaware that that was going to be a part of this thing, and it's very challenging. We're very lucky to live in this community where we have such so many great people. So we're able to find people to work here pretty easily.
Were there any resources or books or things that helped make you more educated on being a people leader? Or is it
uh,
just trial by fire?
yeah, it's just yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't really yeah nothing I really studied.
yeah,
I mean, definitely have learned so much from the people here that have experience in other places and stuff, and get to kind of pick and choose what feels like is the best part, and then get rid of the bad parts and just try and kind of create a hybrid.
yeah. Well, and I can imagine being the first in Thousand Oaks to create this brewery too is also like that probably came with a lot of learnings of dealing with the city, I can imagine, since they
Yeah,
hadn't done it yet either. So,
for sure. It's definitely a learning curve for them as well, and they've been game the whole time and super supportive, and I feel like we probably have exceeded their expectations. I'm not sure what they were expecting, but that was definitely our goal, was to try to make them proud of this thing in this town. And I think they are very proud. They do, they have all their, you know, they have lots of functions here, and so, which is nice because we get to interact with them in a fun environment.
right.
Yeah,
Well, speaking of, them being proud, what are you most proud of?
man. I guess just the whole thing, the whole. Um, it feels good to be a part of helping like 130 people, you know, be able to, you know, survive and thrive. And like you said earlier, like supporting the arts, and we support, first responders and the police department, the sheriff and the fire department. And we try to be there for them as much as we can. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to like be part of the community in which you grew up. And I am not from here. I've only lived here for 4 years, but I can't I don't think I've ever met anybody that lives here who doesn't know Tarantula Hill. So I mean that must be a pretty, I mean, kudos to that. I'm sure that's can be hard to sort of like look at as an outsider, but being able to like have gone to high school here and then also creating something that not only creates jobs, supports the community, but also has become at least a statewide, if not bigger name. So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, I was growing up here. I had obviously had never been anywhere else, so I had nothing to compare it to. But when I got to be, a teenager, getting close to 20, it bothered me that there was nothing to do in this town. Like, I would go to, there used to be a postcard that was it was all black, just a black postcard, and said Thousand Oaks at night. And I was like, man, that's the town I live in. It was embarrassing. And also there was, I don't know, it was I got out of here. I left at like 2021. I moved to Hollywood, and I swore to never return.
Mhm.
Because it was just, I was somebody who was just, I wanted a lot of stimulation, and nightlife, and culture. And I was destined to go and do something where I could go and see the world, and do stuff like that. And then, but also, and I've, like I said, we've played, I think, 48 states, and almost every country in Europe and Japan, and been all over the world. And this is like one of the best places on the planet. And I'm so proud to have come from here, and I love it here, and it's beautiful, and the people are beautiful, and there's so many things. And also now I have, like I said, I have young kids, and raising them in LA was very challenging. Um, and so I really feel like it was a blessing that, I was given this opportunity to come back here, and right away, got a house back in town. And my mom still lives in the house I grew up in. She's still here in town. Yeah. So it's nice. So I mean, that in itself is, yeah, it's definitely something to be proud of, for sure.
Yeah, and I love the idea of many of the business owners here, especially those that grew up here, is this idea of like building the community you want to live in. So whether it was like when you were in high school or not, like this place that you want to be. And so yeah, that's really amazing. And I
Yeah.
love the idea of that postcard. Okay. So thinking forward looking, what is your vision for Tarantula Hill Brewing Company?
We are, like I said, during COVID, we switched to distribution model. So we're hyper focused on growing the brand through distribution. So we're trying to expand. um, in how much beer we can get out there. We are It's crazy how big Southern California is, how many people live here, how many places there are to sell beer. It seems like you could work on it forever and still have room to grow here. But we plan to just keep getting in as many places as we can in Southern California. And obviously here too, it's definitely like San Diego is sort of the epicenter of craft beer. um, our beer is doing very well down there as well, and we've been embraced by the community down there, which is huge. Both of our brewers both worked at Stone in Escondido for 10 years each, and so they're a huge part of the brewer community down there, which is amazing. And yeah, we're trying to, we just kind of expanded into Arizona. We're working on Nevada and trying to work our way up the coast. So that's where a big part of our effort is on growth. And then we're working on the backyard, trying to get that completed so that, that's it's a whole nother venue in itself almost. And then I think potentially in the next year or so, we'll look to do a second location, whether that just be a tap room somewhere obviously that has a food element, or whether we do both the food and the beer, so that and then maybe more, we'll see.
I know, because that sounds like that was sort of the original idea, was just more tap rooms, and then COVID hit and that sort of adjusted things. But would you imagine that being somewhere, maybe a San Diego or more local?
I think San Diego would be ideal. um, Something close to the brewery down there, um, just to help support them. um, and it's also a great, North County is amazing, San Marcos is amazing and kind of growing, and it's a great town. So yeah, something down there would make a lot of sense. We've talked about the San Fernando Valley. I think we would do very well there. I think there's definitely room for more, craft beer in the valley. Then there's lots of, back in the day, anything kind of like this would have to exist on Ventura Boulevard. But it's now sort of kind of expanding, north of the boulevard, all the way across town. So yeah, so it's interesting there. So that's an interesting one. We'd love to be in Ventura. Both of our brewers live in Ventura and they love it there. So having a spot there for them will be really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's incredible the amount of breweries in Ventura County overall, and all seemingly quite great too. So
yeah,
that's interesting to see that blossom. And I know I'd heard before you guys saying that it's a very collaborative, like breweries in general are pretty collaborative. So that's nice to hear. And that like there's not like a limit as to how many can be around.
yeah. It doesn't seem to be that way.
Yeah. Okay. A couple of quick fire questions for you.
All right,
What is your current favorite beer?
El Rey,
What's your favorite thing to do in the Conejo Valley?
Murambi Jiu Jitsu.
And what is one piece of advice you would offer to first-time entrepreneurs?
1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Don't forget it.
I've never heard that quote. Interesting. Okay. I like it. Well, you know what? Thank you so much, John. This was excellent. Congratulations on all the success that you guys have had over the past 6 years, and only continue to grow, and to be able to like see something like that come full circle is really amazing. And thank you for taking the time. And I can't wait to see how, distribution continues to increase and see what's up next.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Conejo Valley Visionaries. If you like today's episode, make sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And don't forget to rate and review us. That's the best way to support the podcast. To enter our giveaways, learn about local events, and to find out more about each guest, follow at Conejo Valley Visionaries on Instagram. If you want to share your visionary story on the podcast, send us an email. We are always open to guest nominations. Email conejovalleyvisionaries@gmail.com. This episode was produced by Christina Denstead and Justin K. Sloan. Conejo Valley Visionaries is edited by Justin K. Sloan and J. Sloan Productions.